Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Fournier, a marketing and communications manager here at Workplace Options. And today I am pleased to be joined by Christy McGuire, WPO's Vice President of Business Solutions, and special guest Suzanne Matheson, who we will introduce in just a moment. And today they are both here to talk about the key to an effective employee strategy. The key, according to 90% of employees, that is, and that's empathetic leadership. Despite employees' enthusiasm for empathetic leadership, true empathy is largely lacking in the workplace. Over half of employees currently believe that their employer's efforts to be empathetic are disingenuous, citing a lack of follow-through or tangible action from employers to really demonstrate their stated sympathy and understanding. That said, joining us now to talk about how employers can transform this stated attribute into a lived behavior is Suzanne Matheson, an absolutely unparalleled mind and body well-being expert in her roles as a high-touch workplace learning experience designer and ethical leadership advisor. Suzanne's extensive knowledge and experience focus on teaching how to create sustainably healthy, harmonious, and humane workplace cultures, and teaching what she calls life smarts, mindsets, and skill sets, including psychological safety, individual and organizational stress responsiveness and resiliency, mindful awareness life skills, emotional and social intelligence, healthy self-care and behavioral habit upgrades, and the importance of exercising what she calls the human superpower of owning your own mind by using critical thinking skills to make wise choices in both our personal and professional lives. With her degrees in psychology and organizational leadership and certification as a leadership professional in ethics and compliance, Matheson has worked with organizations on a myriad of educational and consultancy projects, including addressing the multiple risks of unaddressed toxic and unethical behaviors by leaders, managers, and fellow coworkers, workplace civility and behavioral ethics, and crafting codes of ethical and humane conduct.
And with that said, we are so honored and excited to have her here with us today. Hi, Suzanne. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Chrissy, and also to WPO for inviting me to talk about a subject that matters so much to me. And thanks to all of you who will be listening to this podcast. The first thing I want to do is actually make sure that we are all kind of on the same page in regard to empathy itself and why it's understandably difficult for a lot of people to genuinely express it. Empathy is the ability to acknowledge our shared basic humanity, even if we are unable to identify with the specific feelings, emotions, and circumstances the people around us are going through. While it has often been defined as putting ourselves in someone else's shoes, that is simply impossible to do in so many ways. For example, if a devastating experience occurs, like the death of a child, a bankruptcy, racial, gender, or age discrimination, homelessness, struggles to find reliable and affordable childcare, living paycheck to paycheck, etc. If we haven't gone through that particular experience ourselves, we may find ourselves saying something that is well-meaning, but could actually make that person feel worse, especially if there's an undertone of judgment arising from an inability to see everyone as a fellow human being that is often just doing their best to get through every day. Empathy, along with other soft skills like emotional intelligence, agility, psychological safety, and mindfulness, are often turned into monetized buzzwords and become completely misunderstood and diluted. So it's no surprise that true empathy is largely lacking in the workplace. They are dismissed as soft, but are actually powerhouse skills, in my opinion. Yet they become empty platitudes when companies only pay lip service to them and are not authentically championed in a workplace code of lived ethical and humane conduct. The fact is, they take continuous work to genuinely embody and reflect back into whatever sphere of influence every one of us has. And what we've seen over the past decade or so is all these wonderful mindsets and skill sets are often taught piecemeal, and that just doesn't work. Since everything is connected, a systems approach is absolutely required, or else it's just fragments of awareness and knowledge not placed together into a whole context, where each one interplays and is interdependent on the other to make it all work together. Integrity means whole and unbroken, and therefore a holistically healthy, harmonious, and humane workplace cannot be attained without every contributing aspect woven together in how they are taught, equally valued, and experienced working in tandem. So when it comes to workplace well-being, if a coworker or supervisor has never experienced the physical, mental, emotional, financial, or even work-life balance and time scheduling challenges that people go through, they can be dismissive, act with negative bias, and incivility. If employees are told to keep their problems at home, as has been the norm for many decades, employees are forced to create a work self that can be in direct conflict with their personal life self and even necessitate compromising their deeply held values and ethics to keep their job. This internal conflict often results in unhealthy coping mechanisms that jeopardize their whole person well-being, as well as by retaliatory behaviors in the workplace that can wind up costing an organization in numerous ways: financially, ethically, reputationally, being able to attract and retain great talent, decreased morale and cohesion, and mediocre performance and productivity due to simply not being seen, heard, and treated like a fellow human being. And if the employee feels powerless and has not learned healthy responsiveness as opposed to knee-jerk reactivity, they may act out their frustration upon the people closest to them. If leadership does not model empathetic and humane behavior, competitive and fast-paced work environments can foster and even subtly encourage unethical and uncivil behaviors when employees are placed into adversarial situations that activate primary survivable behavior. In this environment, high producers are allowed to get away with bullying and uncivil behavior. Instead of championing excellence and collaboration and a culture of psychological safety for everyone, regardless of status, favoritism, discrimination, and bias can take hold, and there's a stress and pressure to win at any cost, as opposed to creating a workplace culture where everyone loves to come to work every day and naturally wants to bring their best to every situation, interaction, and task. There was a recent case where an employee of a Big Four accounting firm that claims to champion workplace well-being committed suicide by jumping out a window. This org is known for having a high-pressure environment, and when that is their reality, no one can be well, engaged, and to be able to perform at their best.
Wow, that is amazing. I think to kick off this conversation, I feel like that statement should be read everywhere in every organization. When we think about empathy, sometimes people might be confused on what that really means, or how should they utilize empathy in their daily lives, their personal lives and their work lives. So I'm so excited to dive in here because we have so many different things to talk about. Thank you for sharing that again. As we jump in, I want to talk a little bit about that stat that I mentioned about how too many leaders are really failing to make on their promise to be empathetic. You know, something I came across on your website was a statement about how often, sometimes in highly competitive or toxic work cultures, there are all sorts of unkind or uncivil behaviors or attitudes that are justified as business and not personal, similar to the example you just shared. I'm sure that individual was in an environment like that. Similarly, we actually have a case study that WPO's consulting group just released in which a national media company was confused about why none of their numerous well-being programs seemed to be working. In fact, the team found out that some of those demands or expectations that came with such a competitive and fast-paced work environment were really damaging to employees. And really undermining their leaders' claims of being understanding and flexible and compassionate. So, with that said, the first question, Suzanne, I really have for you is whether you can talk a little bit more about some of the hallmark behaviors that you've observed across the organizations that you've worked with that go against the employer's commitment to leading with kindness or empathy and the threat that they pose to individual and organizational well being.
Well, like I said, at first, it does result in types of behaviors that can sabotage the organization. And when they don't see there's an authenticity, there can be resentment. And if they have no outlet or no ability to speak about that, then that's when they engage in these uncivil, unethical behaviors. And it can be anywhere from, stealing pens, to really undermining another employee's project, or taking, claiming that they were the author of something when it was really a team effort, when they're angry at one of the people in the team. And all these things, in terms of the fact that we live in a culture now with the internet and news spreading fast, and it's like a small town. You can't just expect to get away with things that you used to. And companies were able to bury a lot of these types of behaviors and not let them be known to the public. Now that we have social media and all these outlets for people to express their frustration, their upset, their rage, and they can go on Glassdoor and places like that to say, wow, this is a really terrible place to work, and this is why. This is, one of the areas where it becomes a real risk for the organization that doesn't actually do what they say they're all about. And it's discouraging for folks that are looking for a new job, and they're reading job descriptions and they read about the culture and they go, wow, this sounds like a great place to work. And then once they get in there, it's not anything like they thought it would be. And it's kind of the same old, same old. So, it's really becomes a problem that they can't sweep under the rug, because it has an impact. It's finally hitting the bottom line at a dollar figure level. It's not just, well, it's going to hit us financially. It will hit us in so many ways, like I said before, in terms of, attracting and retaining good talent, and having a place where people really love to come to work. And it's not even about trying to, bring in something that can increase their productivity. It's that they do naturally want to do that because they're happy to be there, and they're treated with caring and kindness, and understanding that everybody has a life, and that life sometimes from outside of work can bleed into the workplace life, and to be able to see that we all have that. So that's why it's really important to say it's not just about money.
Mm-hmm.
It's about reputation. It's about the legacy of the organization. In the future, what do you want to be known as? And I wouldn't think that, any organization wants to be thought of as a place that people hate to come to work. They would be a place where people love to come to work and contribute, be a part of, and in their natural conversations, tell other people how great that company is.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm sure every organization wants to say we have empathetic leaders. We provide empathy in the workplace. We support our people, and this is our culture. But it's not always that way, as you said. I guess my question to you is, how can leaders start to realign what they believe in or what they believe to do with what they actually do? For example, what does empathetic leadership actually look like when you take out all of the labels, adjectives, and buzzwords?
Well, empathetic leadership is also ethical and humane leadership. It's a required synergistic combination. And you can't fake any of these qualities. So if you don't act in accordance with what you truly believe, the finely tuned BS detectors that many people have nowadays call it out. If you try to mimic it and just drop the right trendy buzzwords to give an appearance of those qualities. So getting real and clear about what you believe and what your core values are is a first step. And that's individually, collectively, as an organization. When you and develop your mission statements, what we stand for, they have to be absolutely authentic. And because otherwise people they will know. The next step is taking a compassionate personal self-inventory and seeing where you don't act in accordance with your beliefs and values and have justified compromising your integrity. Enlisting people you respect to call out your blind spots without malice, and do the same for them. As I say all the time, no one wants to walk around all day with food stuck to your teeth, and nobody tells you what they see. So pointing out our behavioral incongruencies and missteps with kindness is a service that we can give to each other. And that same thing goes with the organization. They have to be able to take a real strong and honest and humble inventory as to what they really believe and what they, how they act and behave and make sure that's all in alignment. The third thing is actually forgiving yourself for making harmful or bad choices, as all of us as imperfect human beings do, and choose to acquire and refine those powerhouse life skills and mindsets that give us a window into honestly and courageously seeing how we as individuals and our organizations can acknowledge our human imperfections without defensiveness or justification, own the impact harmful behaviors and choices have internally and externally, learn from what taking these missteps can teach us, and then prevent them from happening again by practicing these new behavioral habit upgrades consistently over time. But these skill sets cannot happen in isolation, like I said before. Just learning one piece, if it doesn't connect to every other piece, then it really is understandable why it's hard to really embrace any type of leadership or other skills training. And the phrase lead by example is really popular these days, but it's not just for those in higher positions. The fact is, we all lead by whatever example we extend in every field of influence we have, both personally and professionally, and none are more important than another. Best practices of empathetic leadership in any industry and in all social engagement must begin with each one of us regularly engaging in deeply and honest and humble self-reflection as to what kind of influence that what we think, do, and say has upon everyone our lives come into contact with, and taking full ownership for that impact. The same goes for organizational leadership and the impacts the business has in both a public-facing way as well as internally within its culture. This often entails the need to bravely put individual and collective egos aside and take responsibility. And from my experience, there's considerable resistance to do so. But if this doesn't happen, a house of cards is constructed, and the old, worn out, dysfunctional, top down command and control internal operating system mindset just doesn't work like it used to. And so employees either suffer in silence or they choose to go elsewhere. So, what I call our human superpower of choice to play big in everything we do and every role we have is a key best practice. And leading by empathetic, ethical, and humane example becomes a positive contagion. And quite simply, is a lived extension of both the golden and platinum rules.
Do you think there's many people, many different leaders, many people in an organization. Is empathy something that you're born with? More of you hear people being called, I'm an empath. I'm a very empathetic person. Whereas others may say, I'm not. I want to be that way, but I'm not. Is it something that people are born with and it naturally comes into light? Or is it something that an individual that's put into a leadership position can learn by training and support from the company and the beliefs they have?
It's absolutely a learned skill. But it's not something that is easy to do, particularly because we are all products of the environment that we are raised in, and from early childhood can be acquiring biases and mindsets and beliefs that don't foster inclusion and don't foster empathy. And it may work for a while, but if you really want to have a real successful career as a leader or a team member, these skills really need to be learned. And it's not just learning how to become more observant and caring, even though we might be different. Like I said in the first question, we might not have any idea what it's like to deal with certain things that people have, but we can come down to that core place of like, I'm a human being. I have gone through things that human beings go through. And to be able to learn how to widen that circle out to reach other people it comes through practice. It comes also from realizing and placing importance on that. If you work for an organization that just sees everybody else as a worker bee, that's never going to be fostered. And we really have learned that people are very impressionable, and so they can be taught to be less humane, to be less caring as well. So it does depend on what you want in life, but it is a learned skill, as well as being an empath is being different than having empathy. An empath, by definition, is hypersensitive, and which can be really good and be very detrimental in terms of how they live their life, because they pick up on so much and they have to often buffer themselves in terms of how that receptivity to other people's problems might affect their well-being. And so there is a little bit of difference in the two, but it's still being able to see other people as human beings that are having difficult times in life, and remembering that and not putting ourselves above. And I think, in my own opinion, you hear about people that have a charmed life and that nothing goes wrong for them and everything is wonderful. I think that's the worst thing that could happen to anybody, because the more that you experience in terms of life challenges that can bring you closer to what another human being is experiencing, and that just teaches you through life to say, oh, I may not know exactly what your experience is, but I've had something similar. And every time you go through a challenge and you survive it and you become more skilled in seeing that just naturally teaches you empathy in context, as well as just having something that is trained.
That is so true. Those challenges allow all of us to be exposed to life and helping others that are going through something similar. That couldn't be more true in itself. I think what's interesting, about what you said before is you get a lot of people that come into an organization and it is something that needs to be learned continuously. And so organizations can focus on bringing leadership together, bringing individuals together, providing them with what this means and how their organization wants to help them, support their workforce in this way. I think the other issue that may be out there is some of these very highly competitive speed to market organizations. They oftentimes are resistant to this type of approach. They want to look at, how can I measure this? If I do implement all of these trainings and implement all of these different things, what's the metric of success? So I guess my question is, what might be some positive, tangible outcomes that organizations can expect from leading with empathy? And then similarly, what might be some key indicators that an organization has successfully embraced empathy as a core value?
Well, you're absolutely right about this whole hyper, speed to market mindset. And with that, unfortunately, it can result in errors that cost lives, let alone loss of profits. We saw this with the Challenger disaster years ago, and more recently with problems at Boeing when employees foresaw potential disasters with their airplanes. And when they spoke up, they were punished for doing so. And what happened is a cost that you can never recover in terms of loss of human life. Money can be regained, but the larger picture, if there's really not an ability to say, like, hey, the O-ring doesn't work in this Challenger, and you better not put it up. And the guy was literally told not to do that and chastised. And then what happened? We lost lives. And so speed to market is really can be very detrimental in regard to the overall empathetic picture and the human-centered leadership. And so it's really a monetary incentive right there to include human-centered strategies in an organization's big picture. There was a recent study done by Catalyst, and they surveyed about 900 different U.S. employees and found that leaders who practice empathy will have a more engaged team, as well as a more profitable business. And their key findings included that empathy is a force for productivity, life work integration, and positive work experiences, and that empathy boosts productivity along with performance, that those which is where those success metrics they begin to look for in those two areas. Where are those numbers? And so of those surveyed, 86% said they are more successful at balancing their work and life concerns when they have a leader focused on empathy, while just 60% without an empathetic leader felt successful. When people reported their leaders truly cared about them, this led to them being more innovative and taking charge. 61% felt more innovative compared to only 13% of those without empathetic leadership. Team members with empathetic leaders are more motivated, come up with different and unique ideas, feel more connected to their work and to each other, and are more likely to want to stay with that employer. I was chatting the other day with my friend Mark Crowley, and he's the author of Leadership from the Heart, and he has a really popular podcast. And he mentioned to me a McKinsey study where their consultant said there are two main themes they're hearing about when they speak with CEOs around the world and what they want. And they are empathy and humanity. They want to learn how to accomplish this. And this is extremely exciting for people like Mark and myself, as we've devoted our life's work to this and are finally seeing it come to the forefront. And with that said, it's not easy, but anything of lasting value must be earned. And as we all know, change can be scary and messy at best. But if it's framed as an adventure, as I like to do, it can actually be fun. Empathetic leadership must include providing a workplace culture that embraces genuine psychological safety for everyone as a lived core value. And I said earlier, unfortunately, it's become a monetized buzzword, and its true definition has been distorted. Psychological safety, as defined by Dr. Timothy Clark in his book, The Four Stages of Psychological Safety, is an excellent framework for building an empathetic, humane, and ethical workplace that ensures inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, and challenger safety. And I include this framework in all the workplace learning experiences and leadership advisory I offer. And so I say up front that you can't lead with what you don't have, and no one likes a phony. So moral courage, humility, ownership, and creating an unbreakable culture of integrity are simply non-negotiables.
You know, my mom always said life is like a classroom. Your life will be like a classroom. And it's so true. I mean, you're going to go through so many things in your life, and it allows you to learn as an individual and then be able to provide that support or empathy to others, whether in the workforce or outside the workforce. And then you also build that resilience that you need to bounce back. And you have your peers, your connections that help you get to that next level because other people have also learned from you. You know, I think today, now more than ever, I was just actually having a conversation with my parents. They were in town, they're in their 80s. And, I said, man, the world just seems so much more crazy today. Was it this crazy back in the 1940s and 50s? And he was like, yes, it is much more crazy. I mean, we did have hard times and the world went through crazy things, but there's just so much going on today. You've got, disruptive events outside of the company that you can't control with wars and geopolitical conflicts and natural disasters. Then you've got inflation all over the world. You have companies merging with other companies and companies laying off people. I mean, you never know what's going to happen when you wake up, right? And so the goal is to we want people to come to work. We want them to have that level of change readiness or be able to be resilient and then support others in the workplace to help them get through those times. I guess in your opinion, where does empathy fit into kind of what I just said, into that equation? How might it serve to enhance organizations with these things when you're dealing with change management or crisis management? How can it help people navigate this unstable market that we live in today?
Well, I had the great fortune of being in a working group for the Ethics and Compliance Initiative, wherein we were tasked to look at exactly this concern. It was created at the height of COVID, which is an external event that it came out of nowhere. And this project was developed almost over 2.5 years, just working on all these aspects and really doing a lot of research and looking into um, the scope of this large problem. And so we produced a collaborative team white paper that was titled Positioning Ethics and Compliance as a Strategic Leader in Times of Stress and Crisis, as well as an accompanying stress and change readiness, responsiveness, and resiliency toolkit, and membership discussion forum, and online webinars. And so all these things were really pulled together as a really important topic. And it timely, but it was really, kind of COVID is what prompted it. And all of these things have been going on, but this was really kind of setting everything to another level. And so they started out looking at the impacts of stress and change and crisis on the organization itself. But being that I've been dedicated to workplace wellness and advocating for that for a long time, I said, well, this project must include the impacts upon the people who work there. And I also insisted that the elephants in the room of toxic leadership and culture must be addressed, as I foresaw what was on the horizon that became known as the Great Resignation, right at the time our findings were published in the white paper. And fortunately, my team agreed to do this because they realized this had to be included in the project. And so ECAO was one of the first to provide this evidence and its impacts upon every organization. And so the employee component, it had to include empathy by necessity, since COVID brought forth what I consider a silver lining, the beginnings of the destigmatization of mental health concerns. And the world at large began acknowledging for the first time that so many people were suffering in silence, in part due to unhealthy workplace behaviors with leadership and their management and their culture. And then empathy for this suffering in this way, it began to grow because we had a common experience that was shared by many, either directly or indirectly, and also with the loss of the people that we loved in our lives. And so we realized that there are a lot of people that were taking medications for anxiety and depression. And because I really believe in addressing root causes of any disease and not just soothing the symptoms, I knew the uncomfortable truth that for any organization that wants holistic workplace well-being, all root causes must be addressed, especially those uncomfortable ones. And this came about when I used to teach mindfulness as a stress management skill to corporate employees. And they taught me that as wonderful as these practices I taught them help with acute stress, their chronic daily stress was really being perpetuated by their job and workplace environment itself, and how it was making them unwell and miserable and feeling powerless to do anything. So I really wanted to bring that perspective into this project and say that we can't just recommend what I would call I always call it band-aids over metastasizing cancers, because what organizations come and do is they will give these types of trainings, and what they end up doing is they teach employees how to manage their workplace stress, and yet they put this squarely on the shoulders of the employees themselves, and they don't own their part in the equation. So when we had this working group together, we concluded that there were several major components that must be in place in order for both the organization and its employees and stakeholders to navigate its way before and during times of change and crisis, and not be caught off guard and be in this constant reactive clean up on aisle 12 mode. So, as we stated in our preface on this entire paper, today's business environment continues to be fast paced and driven by the exponentially increasing speed of information. That, along with evolving technology, remote work, and other factors, has created a constant state of change for almost all of us. Often, change is more sweeping and includes organizational restructuring, refocused business strategy, mergers, acquisitions, right sizing, upsizing, depending on the adjustments to the business products and services. And so all this change and uncertainty absolutely leads to stress upon the individual and the organization. And we found that one constant that should underlie the potential chaos and uncertainty of change is a strong, inclusive, speak up culture that is, again, rooted by your organization's core values in doing so. So we work with functional partners to make a different priority as to all these aspects, and particularly employee mental well-being and physical health during the pandemic. And we began to understand that more than ever, the impact of stress and crisis on our colleagues and our leaders. So successful organizations have risen to the occasion to provide these resources and raise awareness about nurturing positive health habits. And leaders must evaluate the impacts of personal stress, including an assessment of their employees' physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And the same evaluation is necessary for an organization's culture. The crisis over the past, several years from being prompted by COVID has really compelled many organizations to really kind of check the temperature of their corporate culture. Is the culture's pulse weak from a lack of integrity and trust? Is there a fever arising from an internal battle between client compliance and risk and um, getting speed to market and all these different factors? And so, as we said, the goal of a preventative program is building a culture of integrity emerges as the single most important aim that any ethics and compliance function can offer regarding crisis. And the best defense against these situations is to have created a strong culture of ethics, humanity, and integrity that can withstand these challenges and respond instead of just knee-jerk react to anything that comes up to the company. So I just have to emphasize again that empathetic leadership is also ethical and humane leadership.
I loved your point about the band-aid, the band-aid approach. It's just so true. If we could just all stop doing a band-aid to everything, we could just all grow better and learn better. And I know the world's been through a lot lately, especially since coming off that pandemic and then trying to get back into the workforce and manage everything. But, you know, I think the biggest thing when I'm hearing you say from all of this is that you really, as an organization, have to invest in your culture. You have to, if you want strong employee engagement, this is a big component of that. So whatever, as an organization, you need to do to invest in your people, to help them learn the art of empathy as being part of the culture of the organizations is extremely imperative. And I know you mentioned a lot of different things companies can do. Is there any other specific training programs or cadence of those programs or anything else that you would recommend? Would it be a professional trainer that should come in or somebody from outside the company that can help bring this concept to the workplace? Any other thoughts on that?
Well, you kind of pretty much got to me where I'm really passionate about all this because that's what I'm involved in. I'm involved in workplace education and have been for quite some time and watched the different iterations of it. So first of all, if an organization really wants empathy and humanity, as so many CEOs are saying they want, is according to my friend Mark that referenced that study through McKinsey, if they want it to be a core live component and to create an unbreakable culture of integrity, as well as that having that readiness, responsiveness, and resiliency at all times, then they really need to bring in knowledgeable and experienced educators like myself and other thought leaders that live these values, and not just someone or some company that provides trainings around the latest trendy buzzwords, because all they do is they kind of research this stuff, they put something together and they teach it. And it's not authentically coming from their being of who they are and how that translates in terms of these types of trainings. If you're teaching a technical skill, that's one thing, but these really human components are best taught by people that really, really have a passion about them. So what we've kind of come across since COVID is the changes in the learning environment because we had loss of ability to be in person. And so there was this recent adoption of these short-term isolated e-learning courses that the employees are often mandated to take. And they have zero interpersonal live interactive engagement with the learners. So they simply really can't accomplish that the educational goals and objectives that they really want to create that sense of empathy and integrity and humanity. When it's just a bunch of, click through this and answer this question and all that it kind of comes out of like, okay, well, I don't know what I really learned, but I checked all the right boxes and it says that I passed through the training that they're asking me to, or they're mandating me to do. And what happens is they can't have that become a sustainable individual or organizational behavioral habit change. It's really, it might be cheaper upfront to produce all these recorded canned projects, but if they don't actually create a sustainable learning that's embodied and put into all their practices, then they become more expensive in the long run. Because if it doesn't move the needle in a lasting way, there's really no true knowledge transfer. So when they complain, well, this didn't work or that didn't work, or, say I put my employees through this and, I don't see any real change. Well, it's really not the skill set or the mindset that's being taught, but how it's being taught, how it's being championed and modeled and reflected within and without. Because like I was referring to before about treating the stress management trainings that I was giving, and it was given to all the employees, but the managers and supervisors were not being given the same training. So the employees were learning these great skills, but then they were being yelled at for taking time out of work to learn what the CEO wanted them all to learn. And so you had this huge mess. And so it wasn't brought on the level of leadership to work through the organization. So it's not like, well, let's teach all the employees what we want them to do. And again, we come back to the authenticity. If I'm not living this, if I'm not championing and modeling it, then how is it going to be embraced? And it's kind of stupid, to be honest, to think that it will be. So it's really a disservice to offer these recorded and canned and short and one and done trainings with these amazing power tools that simply won't have a chance to take hold because they don't provide the essential components for their success that I've taught about for years. Consistent practice with repetition and supportive reinforcement over time, which is shown to be an average of 6 weeks minimum. And then with future follow-up. And all human skill sets and mindset learning must be lifelong and continual and reach into the employee's personal and social worlds as well, to where their work self is the same as their personal self. So, you take any of the mindsets that have gone before of, there used to be, like a 2 week, 2 weeks to this or that. And people like Oprah and all those folks were really, 2 weeks to whatever you want in your life. That didn't work because that doesn't give the time to really unlearn and practice and reinforce new behavioral sets. So fortunately, with folks like James Clear and his book about habit change, we're beginning to see that underscoring where that original mindset, which still gets employed because it's cheaper. Hey, we can sell you on 2 weeks, but it doesn't work if in the long run. So, and like I said, so it might look cheaper at the outset, but in the long run, the investment really needs to be into something that works over time. And so now we're hearing about organizations using AI to teach empathy skills and offer AI coaching sessions. And to me, that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, robots cannot teach human life skills because they cannot feel or experience what it's like to be a human being. And so this makes no sense to me and could even have disastrous outcomes. And a lot of people and I'm not saying this as a negative, but just as a fact, is that folks that are instructional designers, they're not teachers and they're not writers and leaders. They go and they just kind of source information. And now you're taking AI to data scrub out of people's websites. And so it's not a real training that is even being offered by the people that are putting these forth. So in my opinion, the next big wave in workplace employee leadership mindset and skill sets educations that will come from forward-thinking organizations like WPO that again can lead the way with what I call a return to a high-touch learning experience, either in person or via live online interactive courses that allow for both clinical and anecdotal evidence of their value in the form of the shared stories that happen when you are together in a room full of people, even if it's an online room, because there's something about hearing a story that embeds like I know that too, I felt that too, and the learning becomes organic. And no matter what kind of a great script that you have for leading a course, these types of experiences go, I got that. I feel that. I know that. It's not just words. I'm not being taught at. I have that ability to communicate that and know that I'm not alone in having these experiences. Again, particularly when we're talking about these quote unquote soft skills that really are very challenging to teach. And so when that is done, and that is in my own experience of having gone through full circle of spending the beginning of my career doing in person, live, online, in a room, wonderful dynamic trainings where you can see people's faces and you can see when they have those aha moments or when they even cry. That is like the epitome to me of where you actually can teach people how to learn these types of behaviors. And if that's done, then these tangible metrics will actually be in the behaviors and the attitudes of the employees, in their actions, in how they show up to work every day, in terms of how they engage with one another and bringing their best. And but everybody's looking for all these net numbers that, oh, well, this number says this, and this, when it very often can't be reflective of what somebody learned, but the value is there because how they show up every day.
You know, we could talk for hours, but you've hit something that I'm passionate about. We live in such a digital world, and I get it. I get everybody has to have the app, the phone, quick access to everything. We have to have the e-learnings. We got to have do it in your own time. But it's actually, from what studies show, not helping our society. And I do think that organizations are out there saying, what is the best programs for my people? My people are going to have bad days. I need them to come to work even when they have a bad day, and I need them to do their job and get the help they need. But at the end of the day, it's not about the programs you have. It's not about, I have quick access to this and I have quick access to that and I've got this program and I can do this in my own time. That's not really helping your people. When somebody has something going on in their lives, what's going to help them get through that is their peers, their peer-to-peer connections, their
Mm-hmm.
friends, their coworkers. In fact, I can't remember what I read, but you have a problem at work or you have a problem at home, or I mean, whatever it may be, you're going to reach out to someone you're close to and say, "Can I just talk to you? This is really, I'm really upset today." And maybe you cry and maybe you
Mm-hmm.
don't. Maybe you ask for advice, and you're just by the other person providing that support and providing that empathy allows you to kind of reflect and to figure out, okay, I can do this. I can come to work the next day. I feel connected to that environment. I know they trust me, they believe in me, they're going to help me. And it doesn't, like, if you work for an organization like that, you have that kind of support and trust, you're going to have strong employee engagement. It isn't about the programs you have. And so you're right, going back to the trainings, it's like, yes, there's people that are born this way or just naturals at it, like with anything in life, but there are people that have to learn that. And it is okay to talk to a coworker. You should be able to trust someone to get through situations you're experiencing. And training in person, really talking through those things is so helpful. And we're just getting away from that in our society. Everything is virtual. People are multitasking. They're not paying attention. If we could just go back to that in-person learning, that in-person connection, and sharing those stories and connecting with people, you can really accomplish those goals. You don't need to measure certain metrics, right?
Exactly. And I mean, you look at as humans progressing through history, how was knowledge transferred? Sitting in circles, and that's how history, kept being perpetuated because of interaction. It wasn't about a tool or an app or, anything that kept this going. And so much knowledge is one-on-one human experience. And now we're seeing a lot of the negative impacts, particularly on the generations that grew up with all of this stuff. I mean, from the beginning of life, they've had a phone almost since they were like babies, and so they've lost their social skills. They've lost what it's like to be human in a way, to be relating with other human beings. They interact by text. They don't even talk on the phone half the time.
But
And so
didn't
we're
that
seeing
contribute to the Great Resignation, really? I mean, because people are like, I don't know how to work here. I don't
well
know how to connect with people here. They don't like me and I'm just going to leave, right?
that is part of it. But I think, again, when the MIT study came out that coined, I don't know if they coined the term, but it was all these factors that came together that made people like, I don't want to work in a place where I don't feel like a human being, and I'm not treated like a human being, and I'm not valued, and I'm not perfect, but I'm being pressured to be perfect and on time and all the time. And that's just not how we thrive as human beings. And so this is why workplace wellness programs often fail, is because they bring in this thing and they go, oh, we got all this, we got the gym, we got this, and then they go, but why aren't you happy? Why aren't you engaged? We gave all this to you. But that's
Exactly.
not what people are yearning for internally. They want connection.
Mm.
And so, like in person, it really isn't ideal for that, but you can do that live interactive. But you can't do it live interactive when there's 500 people at once, because you'll see this chat window go by with comments, and nobody is really being heard. They might be able to say, hey, contribute, but you're not being heard. So it might be, yes, it's less economic to do it for sets of 100 max at a time, but it's the long-term retention and value and implementation of these skills that really require that interaction that is human, and we're talking about empathy and humanity and ethics. All those things are learned from hearing others' mistakes and the choices they made and what they learned, and how they grew. And that's why organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous are valuable, because people come in and they share their stories, and that hits at a level of resonance with somebody else that goes, I'm not alone, I'm heard, and I'm okay to feel this way. And so, I think that I understand why e-learning became a big deal during COVID, because of all this. And then you've got all the ancillary aspects of, well, now there's software that wants to be sold, and there's all these LMS system, all the stuff that's become this new dependent economy. And they're saying, well, if you go back to in-person learning, then we can't sell all this stuff. But what's the real important thing here is
Right.
getting the employees to attain those skills that are not only helpful in the workplace, but just them as who they are as people, and as they grow and evolve. And no matter where their life or career takes them, they will have these skills. They are transferable, they are life skills. And I just think that, again, as I've mentioned before, all the different risks that happen when you don't have this, it's just becoming more to the forefront. It's no longer just um, shareholder value. It's like, that's why we exist, to raise the profile of our shareholders. That's not it. And the workplace really has been a place where people have found their engagement and their social life, and then that was kind of taken away from them. And for some, the younger folks, like, they just came up and during COVID, and they don't even know any better. But just study after study is showing that this has had a real detrimental impact on who we are as people, on our ability to be empathetic. And then we have more and more influences through social media that can skew a mindset into being less human and less understanding, and lose those critical thinking skills and all the different types of things that we try to teach us to become, kind, nice, decent human beings. So, and so focused on numbers, the numbers never really matter to me. But they want to check off the box and see, well, see this, we just justified our ROI here. The ROI really is how the company these days, how they're seen, perceived as a wonderful place to be. They're contributing with their products and services in a beneficial way, and they're treating the people that work there as the valued resources, the human resources that they are. And so this is how our trainings have to be, is reminding us that human interaction has to be, I think, a component in our learning experiences.
Well, this has been an extremely insightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me today. Before we wrap up, I don't think I got the chance to acknowledge this in the beginning, but if you've referenced some amazing books and information, and I'm sure people may want to reach out to you, and maybe they have questions or they wanted to follow up on a few things. So if you could just maybe give us your contact information, a way we could, maybe there's a website, and then if there's anything else as we wrap up here today that you think we should know about this, the importance of having empathy in this evolving future that we have.
Thank you. That's a two-part question. I get the first part after the. I'll switch that in arrangement. But I wanted to say, first of all, what I think is the most important thing is that empathetic leadership begins with each and every one of us seeing its value in both our personal and our professional lives. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, true empathy is really difficult to feel towards people who we see as different than us and with whom we don't share common experiences. And in our increasingly divided times, we must be able to reconnect with our basic humanity and discover where and how we are more alike than we are different. And one of the most powerful and transformative empathy building practices that I learned when I was teaching mindfulness skills and really has become into what we call social mindfulness, which is a broader expansiveness in how it was taught in the West initially. And it really brings in that whole human component and psychological safety and in a larger picture. And this practice, I don't know who developed it, but it's called Just Like Me. And I've led it in many of the learning experiences and projects that I design and deliver. And I even did a training with police officers, and I did it in conjunction with a sergeant who actually had me come in and teach this practice. But I let him lead this practice because he was teaching this to fellow officers, and it really got into touch their humanity at a very basic level, where you live in and you work in a profession where you're kind of taught to not be human, not to push your humanity to the background. And he led them through this practice, and they were crying and they were hugging each other, and they said they had forgotten, that this is an important component of myself as a person, and why they suffer so much in that profession, with because they're not allowed to be human. And so I like to use that in almost every training that I've ever led, because I think it just bleeds across in so many experience, whether you're doing DEI trainings or ethics trainings, whatever it is, empathetic leadership, adaptive leadership, all this stuff comes back to understanding who we are as basic human beings that are not perfect. And we make mistakes, and just like everybody else does. And so any of these things that as we evolve as in our own roles of leaders, and like I said, in every sphere of influence we have, and we all lead by our example. We all have an influence and impression. So a practice like this is a constant reminder to take a step back and remember we are imperfect human beings and doing our best in whatever way we can, because as the artist Prince wrote, we are gathered here today to get through this thing called life. And that's what we're doing. We're just getting every day. We don't know what's going to hit us at any given moment. We are all really doing our best. And we can always learn to become more engaged, more humane, more caring people. And because that's a choice that we make, and we see the value in it. So, but to go to your second part of your question, I have a recorded practice of this Just Like Me, and we'll have the audio of it that will be kind of after we're done here, that you all can listen to, and then just go through that practice. And it'll be hard pressed for you to not feel something, because it really comes down to, oh, wow, that person I thought was so different from me is just like me in so many ways. And so when we go out in our day and we deal with all this divisiveness, and we can just kind of bring back to ourselves, yeah, I may not agree with them in a lot of ways, but they all have the same kind of experiences as a human being as I do. So my website is lifesmarts.net, and that's called Life Smarts because, we all know about book smarts. That's academics. We all know about street smarts, but life smarts are what we acquire going through this journey of life, the wisdom that we gain, that, it doesn't matter. We don't have to be old, and to have life wisdom. We can have it at any age. And just because you have academic knowledge, or street smarts knowledge doesn't mean you actually have the wisdom from them that you can actually use as you go through life and how we show up in every situation. So, like I said, got a recording of this practice, and you will be able to go through that at the end of our time together, and then find it on my lifesmarts.net website, and lots of resources and all kinds of good stuff on there as well, and other recorded practices that will be available as well. So I really appreciate that you've asked me about that as well. And I just think that is really what we come down to, is how do we become empathetic leaders? We have to see where in our lives do we have it or we don't have it, and do the work and make it fun. I always like to refer to being an Indiana Jones of your own inner archaeological dig. You go in and you look at yourself. People resist this stuff. I don't want to look at myself. But if you go in and you see, well, there's there's junk to be tossed out, but there's, gems to be polished. And there's things inside of me that don't work anymore, and things in me that can get better. And I can actually make an adventure out of that and go, oh, I just cleared that level. I just got rid of that. I saw where it didn't really work in my life. And that's where it can become not scary. And that we can face that last part of that thing with Indiana Jones when he sees the snakes, and he goes, those are our deepest fears, but a lot of it's in our mind. And so when we begin to create that safe expression of learning, that it becomes less scary and more fun to become a kinder, more empathetic, humane person, which we all are.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for joining today. Until next time, maybe we'll have a series for this one.
I'd love that. Thanks so much. The quality of empathy is promoted as a critical leadership soft skill that can allow us to accurately place ourselves in someone else's shoes, to understand the other person's situation, perceptions, and feelings from their point of view, and to be able to communicate that understanding back to the other person. The fact of the matter is that being able to attain a state of absolutely accurate empathy with what another person is experiencing is at best difficult, and more often than not, impossible to attain. In many instances, especially when the person is experiencing loss and grief, trying to come off as empathetic and helpful can actually create more pain when the recipient feels that no one can understand what their suffering feels like. Every human being has everyday life experiences that we share common ground with one another, even if it's not an exact empathetic match to our own. Nonetheless, we are often being prompted to focus more upon our differences instead of what unites us as fellow imperfect human beings, often with stress-filled lives, who are also trying to get through the day, the week, the month, the year. To aid you in reminding yourself of this reality that helps to build a new pattern of response, we'll do a conscious awareness skills building exercise called Just Like Me. I've seen several attributions for the creator of this practice, but I don't have a definitive source. However, one of the beautiful things about meditation practices is that they are fairly fluid and can be adapted in your own voice to fit your life and needs in the present moment. So feel free to modify as you grow comfortable with basic frameworks. This practice reminds us how similar other people are to us, thereby cultivating a sense of inclusion and equality, as well as fostering other powerful so-called soft skills like kindness, compassion, patience, and non-reactivity. So vital when we are in stress-inducing situations or interactions where we may be at least temporarily forgetting about our shared humanity, especially now. This will be a formal sitting practice, but that doesn't mean you can't do this while standing or walking or riding a bike or other solo activity if that's your preference. Meditation isn't supposed to be just one way. In fact, the larger intention behind attaining the life skill of mindful awareness is that it becomes an integral part of all of your everyday activities. So kindly sit up straight with a strong alignment with your back, neck, and head, and surround yourself with the energies of gracefulness, poise, and dignity. Feel a sense of symmetry and balance. And while your back is strong but not stiff, allow the front of your body to be soft and open. Settle fully into your body. Your hands can be resting in your lap or at your sides, whatever feels natural. Your eyes may be softly closed or slightly open and gazing gently toward a neutral spot or the image on the screen. And now take a soft, slow inhale. And then release the breath with an easy, slow exhale. And again, breathing naturally without a sense of effort or straining. Feel your breath expand within and the energy that accompanies it to move throughout your entire body. And then with each exhale, let go of any stress or tension. Allow your breath to flow naturally and calmly. Now reflect for a few moments upon someone that you feel is completely different from you, that you may even consciously hold some biases against, or perhaps someone that simply annoys you. But please, the first few times you do this practice, don't choose anyone or any reason that is really upsetting. Get a clear image of this person in your awareness and see yourself reflected back from the mirror of their eyes. This person has a body and a mind, just like me. This person wants to feel a sense of belonging, just like me. This person has feelings, emotions, thoughts, and spiritual needs, just like me. This person has, in his or her life, experienced physical and emotional pain and suffering, just like me. This person has at some point been sad, disappointed, angry, or hurt, just like me. This person has at some point caused another to experience pain, just like me. This person has felt unworthy or inadequate, just like me. This person worries and feels scared sometimes, just like me. This person has longed for companionship, just like me. This person is learning about life, just like me. This person sometimes has blind spots about the impact of his or her behavior upon others, just like me. This person makes mistakes sometimes, just like me. This person sometimes feels confused and doesn't know who or what to trust or believe, just like me. This person wants to be treated with kindness, respect, and honesty by others, just like me. This person wants to be content, just like me. This person wishes to be free from pain and suffering, just like me. This person wishes to be safe and healthy, just like me. This person wishes to be happy, just like me. This person wishes to be loved, just like me. This person wishes to be whole, just like me. And now allow some wishes for well-being to arise. I wish this person the strength, resources, and support to navigate their difficulties in life. I wish that this person be free from pain and suffering. I wish this person the strength and courage to get help when they need it. I wish that this person be treated with kindness, respect, and honesty. I wish that this person always discovers the truth for any answer they seek and not be swayed by those intent on taking advantage of them. I wish that this person be peaceful and happy. I wish that this person be truly loved. I wish that this person extends all the kindness, compassion, respect, honesty, dignity, and humanity that they wish to receive in equal measure toward others. I wish that this person lives in harmony and amity, respecting human similarities and differences, and become whole and balanced in body, mind, emotions, and spirit. Because this person is a fellow, imperfect human being, just like me. Take a deep breath in and release. And then slowly open your eyes. And I'll close this practice with a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Realizing that the other person is also just like me is the basis on which you can develop compassion, not only towards those around you, but also towards your enemy. Normally, when we think about our enemy, we think about harming him. Instead, try to remember that the enemy is also a human being, just like me. Thank you so much for joining me and for your practice. Until the next time we meet, may you be well, may you be safe, may you be happy, and take good care.